In my previous video, I brought up the point that you cannot call yourself a Christian and be a supporter of Donald Trump. And the reason for that is that Donald Trump is the exact opposite of everything Jesus taught. In fact, Donald Trump has the spirit of the Antichrist. I'm not saying he is the Antichrist, but he has that spirit. And the Antichrist is the opposite of Jesus. And one of the points I brought up was on taxation. The taxes should be fairly distributed from the most coming from the wealthy. And that's one thing Jesus taught. For Jesus taught in Luke 12:48, he spoke, from everyone who much has been given, much is required. From one who much has been entrusted, even more will be demanded. And that means higher taxes. That's what Jesus is saying. Now, taxes isn't the only thing that much is demanded of them, because the more you're given, the more you owe back to society. And money isn't the only gift that people are given. But anyway, this one person, not putting him down for this, is making the argument that I often hear. He said, Jesus is teaching about personal responsibility, not giving governments a mandate to raise taxes. You know, some people see taxes as a big evil thing, but in fact, we do have a responsibility, and it's not an either or. Some people say it's either personal responsibility on one hand or group responsibility on the other. Either it's group or personal or group. Hey, it should be both. That's the only way it works. Why do we need it to work? Well, Jesus tells us this in Matthew 25, verses 41 through 48. Jesus said to those who would be going to hell, he said to them, "You who are accursed, depart from me into eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger." That's biblical for immigrant, by the way. Keep that in mind as Donald Trump and his racist administration and his racist ICE are attacking innocent immigrants. He said, "I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me, naked, and you did not give me clothes to wear, sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they will answer him, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry, thirsty, a stranger, naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not take care of you?" Then he'll answer them saying, "Truly, I tell you, just as you did not do it for one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." And then those will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Note the words there. Do not do it for one of the least of these. One slips through the fingers. See, individually, we can't. It's very easily. One's going to slip through. We can't get to everybody. I like this illustration. When I was, my first job as a teenager was as a busboy in a casino restaurant in Reno, Nevada, where I went to high school. And it was a little casino known as Palace Club Casino, owned by a nice Sicilian family. I'm Sicilian, by the way. And anyway, I'd be walking, about to go into the doors to go to work, and well, besides the name for bums, I don't know what else you would call them, but they were alcoholics. Just mostly bum money off of people to get their booze, and that's how they stayed alive for a short while. But they would come up to me, brother, can I borrow a quarter from you? Brother, can I borrow a dime? Brother, can I borrow a nickel? Ah, man, I had to talk to mom because I had no idea I had so many brothers out there. I'm joking a little bit there, but the point here is, even if I'd been the CEO of that casino, I could not have helped them all. But all the community together could help a lot more. But anyway, keep that in mind, because individually, personally, you can give a little bit. And we should do things on a personal level. Yes. But then we do it as a corporate group, as a group, like a church congregation, like maybe a school, like maybe a neighborhood, maybe as a city, maybe as a county, maybe as a state, as a nation. And we're starting to do it even as a world. You see how it gets bigger and bigger, and the bigger the net is, the more people helping, the more people are helped. That is why we need to do it as a group. That's why that tax is necessary. Yes, we help individually, but we also help as a group. You come along, and there's someone who needs to be lifted up, like those bums, okay? They virtually got into that lifestyle, and individually, none of us are going to be able to pull them out very easily. But as a group, we can offer them rehabs, to help them get off of the booze or off of the drugs. And so instead of maybe having 20 more years left of their life, some of those drugs will take that life away pretty quickly. They can have 60 years ahead, depending on how young they are. And they could be a productive part of society. Think about this. A lot of you Republicans love to trash those people on welfare. How would you rather see it? That person lifted up, help to have a job that would pay decent and able to make the money so they don't have to be on welfare. So they're not taking from society, but instead they're paying into it. Would you rather have that? That's what we can do as a group. Now, some people, they whine and complain, and they think somehow taxation is unbiblical, unchristian. Well, Jesus thought differently. The Pharisees and the scribes, they tried to trick him. And they came to him and they asked him this in Luke 20, verse 22 through 25. They said, "Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" But he perceived their craftiness, and he said to them, "Show me a denarius. Whose head and whose title does it bear?" And they answered, "The emperor's." And he said to them, "Then give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." I want you to notice this here. Dollar bill. You see what's right here on the top there? United States of America. That's who owns this dollar bill. That's right. I don't own it. I possess it. I have it for legal tendency. I won't say the word right. Excuse me. I get tongue-tied sometimes. But currency, tender, legal tender to pay, and I earned it. I earned the right to use it, but I don't own it. It belongs to the United States. That's why, technically, if I was to go to write things on here, and you see sometimes people print messages on the dollar bill, that's defacing it. And if the right person sees you, witnesses, you can actually get fined, maybe even arrested. I forget the actual law to it, but it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the government. This dollar bill, just to print it, cost 1 nickel. At least last time I checked, and maybe more now. That was a few years back. But when I went to the bank and I withdraw X amount of dollars, did they charge me a nickel for each dollar? No. Am I using it for free? No, because my taxes paid for it. You see how it all kind of works together? But our taxes are there. And Jesus himself said, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. What belongs to the United States government, you give to them. Now, some people say, well, I don't like seeing my taxes going for X, Y, or Z. And I'll agree with you. I hate the fact that so much of my tax money is going to the Pentagon, which is like a big black hole, sucking all the dollars in, and they're never seen again, and no accountability. And you hear things like a $1 million hammer or things like that. Whether those are folklores or sayings or true or not, I don't know. But we do know there's a lot of waste. And there's no accountability. I hate seeing my tax dollars going for that. I am really furious over the fact that all those innocent people being murdered, and I say murdered in Gaza by Israel, 75% of the cost of that is coming out of my pocket and my taxes. That irks me to no end. And so one could easily say, I shouldn't have to pay that taxes. What gives them the right to take that money from me? I worked hard to get that money. We've all heard those type of arguments. Well, Jesus, there's a passage about this in Matthew 17, verses 24 through 27. And it reads this. When they came to Capernaum, I'm getting tongue-tied again. The collectors of the temple tax came to Peter and said, does your teacher pay the temple tax? Now, that temple tax, each Jew at that time, when they reached the age of 20, once a year, had to pay what was equivalent to 2 days' work in that temple tax. Think about it, whatever probably the average wage. I made more than the average before I retired, but the average work day for a person, you pay that much for that temple tax. And Peter answered, yes, he does. Then when Peter got home, Jesus spoke before Peter had a chance and said, what do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth take the taxes? From their children, like the children of the king, or from others? And Peter answered, from others. Then Jesus said to him, then the children of the king, are free, exempt from the tax. However, so that we do not give an offense, go to the sea, cast your hook, and the first fish that comes up that you catch, open his mouth and you'll find a coin. Take that coin, because it'll be enough to pay for you and me for our temple tax, and go pay it. Understand this. Jesus did not have to pay that tax. You see, that the temple tax is going for, Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is God incarnate. Why should he have to pay that tax? He didn't, but still he did anyway. And the point here is that we are commanded for the rich to pay the most, but we each pay our fair share on down the line. The less you make, the less you pay, but we all pay taxes in some way or another. Some it's on our some of it's income tax, some of it's payroll tax, and some of it's sales tax. But we all pay as we go along. Now, I know the wealthy say it's not fair that they have to pay most of the nation's bills, and they argue it should be distributed evenly among all the population. And I would say that'd be fair if all the nation's wealth was also evenly spread out through all the population. So everybody had the same amount, earned the same income, so no one had more than somebody else. But I'm kind of afraid I'm going to hear people screaming communism. And in fact, that is pretty close to what communism is. And keep in mind, communism isn't a bad thing. Actually, it's the most perfect form of government that there is. The problem is human beings are not perfect. And to make it work, they had to use dictatorships. And that's what made it evil. Dictatorships always become evil because they put the power on top. And that person begins to see himself as a god, able to do whatever he wants, taking this right away, that right away. And whether the dictatorship's from a right-wing fascism, like we saw with the Nazis, or the far left wing of the communists, it's still evil and bad. In the United States, there are no threats from communism. We believe in a government that works for everybody and helps lift people up. Yes, that is socialism, but having a socialism does not make it communism. The two are not one and the same. Some people wrongly use them interchangeably because, you see, there are socialist countries that are not communist, but every communist country is socialist. You see, socialism is simply when we as a group do what we could not do as individuals. So we paid for our highway system throughout the country. Nobody could have done that individually, but as a group we could. As a group, we can pay for a military. Individually, we could not support the militaries we have. As a group, we support a police department. The last thing you want is a private police department, and so on and so forth. You see, now, the one rule of thumb is that when there's a public need that the private industry either cannot do or should not do, then it becomes incumbent upon the government to provide that. That's socialism. In the old days, when colonies were just starting out and someone was raising a barn, the whole community would come together and raise that barn. That was socialism in its most primitive form. Now we're more advanced since we're so big, and we do it through our tax dollars all together, coming together. Communism is everything's been socialized. Everything belongs to the government. And the only way it works is through a dictatorship, as I've already said, makes it evil. So obviously, dividing everything up equally doesn't work. Maybe limits on wealth would. But anyway, the point is, the more you earn, the more you receive, the more you pay, and that's the way it should be, a higher percentage all the way up. My opinion, there should be a wealth limit, a limit of 100 million, no more. When you hit 100 million in wealth, everything you get after that is taxed at 100%. So I get $1 over that 100 million, Uncle Sam just comes and takes that away, every dime of it, every cent. That is fair, because otherwise people are going without, and that's the whole problem. Anyway, I have talked on long enough, and I think I've addressed what this person said, and I hope I answered questions. Have a great day.